It's always daunting when I have a new audience, and I'd like to, firstly, always acknowledge the traditional custodians of this great land, allowing me to walk on their country here as well. I'm very lucky to be able to walk on the country of many Aboriginal communities across Australia, and I find that of something really valuable because they've taught me so much about how this land can be managed in a way that, personally as a white fella, I didn't really see in the beginning. I grew up in Canberra, before Canberra was a city, when it even had green areas in the middle. But, it still didn't equip me for looking at the land in the way that it had been previously seen. And it's like, you go through life and you take steps, and all of a sudden you take this giant step that gives you this new view of how everything happens. And that is what happened to me, because I was incredibly lucky to spend time in the Northern Territory with part of my job. This is a really important thing, that this statement, a sick country is only healed by healthy people, I think is something you should all, you don't need an answer to it now, but think about it. It's a long-term thing. And it was given to me by an elder as I sat with him in an amazing escarpment in the Northern Territory. We had some time spare. We'd been out fishing, we'd been walking the country, we'd been out there for several weeks, just walking country, seeing what was happening, looking at traditional sites. And he sat there and he said, "Can you hear my people?" And I sat there and I was white. I could hear the wind, I could hear noise through the rocks. And he said, no, that's my people. And I sat there for a while with him, and it really started to make sense. And then he came out with this. He said, look at what we have. He said, my people are sick, and my country is sick. And I said, well, what do we need to fix it? He said, we need to get back to our earth, and we need to walk it. He said, the kids spend their time drinking Coca-Cola, eating KFC, killing themselves with sweets. And I said, I'll make a pact with you that I will take your message across Australia. And I've done that. I'm still doing it. And it means an awful lot, because he was so right in everything he said, and I've seen it down here as well. For people all across the world, there are the forces that come to us from nature. We have water, we have the wind, we have earth, and we don't always take care of it, and then we have fire. Now, fire is seen by everyone in different ways. The fire that unfortunately we see these days is the scary sort. It's the one that we're incredibly inventive people. We try and mould everything to suit ourselves rather than living with it. So, yes, big fire comes, we decide we'll put it out. We'll become incredibly good at it. We'll build something like this. We'll cover the landscape as quickly as we want. Pour chemical all over it. It's really a last-ditch measure. The people of the north don't think like that. It's a truly amazing thing. I could go out into the bush with those people and light a match wherever I wanted, wherever it felt right. They would teach you that this place needs burning today, but that place will need it in a week or two. And they had that contact every day. They walked the land, they knew those places, they knew what they were doing, they knew that what they were doing would not damage that site, but would help with something else. Whether it was a food plant, it could be medicinal plants that they were trying to keep. They were all very important things. But somehow we got to this point where we spend our life fighting it rather than using it as a tool. And as a tool for me is very different, and I'm not trying to create problems here with our RFS visitors. It's not at all what I'm trying to do. We see tools in a different way. From what I've learned, there are sacred elements to a forest. The canopy should never be burnt. The canopy is sacred. The canopy holds special things that you don't touch. It seems really bad to end up like this at the end of the day, when it could be something so much more enjoyable and not life-threatening. And this is an example of one of the fires I've lit in the north with friends. I can't show you there, but Lewis has bare feet. We all walk around in it afterwards. It's not hot. It goes out within minutes. We don't put it out. It might burn for several days, in fact. Everyone has secured their places where they live. It's not going to burn the homes out. So there are elements where they've made sure that where they live is safe, but they understand implicitly what that fire is going to do and how it's going to act, where it's going to go, what is going to come after that fire. You know, if there are too many grevilleas there, well then they fix it. If it's rocky country, we know when to burn it. If it's black soil country, we know when to burn that. With very specific places for very specific times of burn. That's a burnt landscape. I think it looks pretty nice, actually. That's a Spinifex landscape in the Kimberley. Very, very important. Dozens of threatened species live there, yet it's burnt every couple of years in a patch. And that's the key, it's patchwork. I'm sorry for going through these stories of my history, but when I arrived in the Northern Territory, I knew nothing about burning. I was scared of it, like everyone else. Well, I saw the burns down here, and I started to work with people, I started to see things a bit differently, and I went to a very, very important botanist in the Northern Territory and asked him about fire and plants. He knew, he'd been there his whole life, and I said, you know, what do you do? He said, we patchwork burn. I split Northern Territory into 4 segments. I burned that segment at the beginning of the year, this one a month later. By the end of the year, I burned all of the Northern Territory in 4 fires. His patches were hundreds and hundreds of thousands of kilometres. The patches I'm talking about are the size of this room. Tiny things, interlinked with you'll burn this little bit, you'll go out at night, burn this area here if it wants to burn. Then it might just trickle over to somewhere else, flare up a little bit, another burn that size. And that's how it goes. You have refuges for animals in between, refuges for plants that might not like burning all the time. There's differences between them. Environmental fire culture was an Aboriginal management tool. It was a very important tool to be able to walk the land. In the Northern Territory you have grasses that are 8 or 9 feet tall. They're spiky, they hurt, no one wants to walk through them. So you burn a pathway. But it's a traditional pathway that's burnt by that family as they walk through it every year, in season. So pretty much they're in the same place at the same time of the year every year. They burn it as they go. that means there are different plants there when they get back there each time. It might be they burn, they're thinking a long way ahead. We want fruit in 12 months' time. We burn this now, so those fruit will be there when we come back. It's all very planned. It's actually very, very good science. The best science we had in Australia's history, probably. And it was practiced by the best conservationists that have ever walked this land. There's hundreds and hundreds of hectares of grassland in this area where we've been doing some burn experiments similar to what I did in the Territory. And it's early days, we've only, it's a year and a half since we started that, but things are really rocking along. This is an Anniepogan. Now I thought when we put we put a spring burn through, and you can see that this is a burnt tussock. I hope everyone can see that. So that's the whole tussock with new shoots coming out of it, so it's all burnt. That burnt tussock sat there for over 12 months before the new shoots came, but they did it still, and they produced seeds straight away. I think the really neat thing, I mean, Michelle and I have been looking at it this week, so there's the seeds that are coming from it. Great little native grass, but all of our burn plots are pretty much weed-free now as well. So one burn, and we've knocked out just unbelievably the invasion of weeds that was occurring there as well. Now I didn't know what was going to happen with this. I'm okay up north, but this is all new territory for me. But it worked straight away. I don't know the period between burns yet. How long do we leave it? When do the weeds come back in? What have you got to do? If you were to burn that grass, I think, too often, you would knock it out of the system because it took 12 months to recover. But it recovers. So that's our first step. But it just goes to show the early results are really, really positive. So we've got, again, I think we've got 4 species of grass marked in this area, but we're looking at all the plants in our plots. We've got burnt, we've got unburnt. We're going to do another burn next month to look at an autumn burn and how that affects it. And as long as the gods are kind to us, we'll be able to keep doing this for a while. I think it has really positive outcomes for everyone. But the thing that got to me was, we had some Aboriginal lads with us yesterday, and they looked at one of the burns. They knew nothing about this work at all, and they looked at one of those sites and said, "Oh, doesn't that look fantastic?" And I thought, they said, "Oh, look at all that bare ground." But it wasn't bare ground, to be quite honest, because the ground was covered in lichens and all sorts of things that had come up since. It's just there were no weeds that you couldn't, normally you won't see the lichens and things because the weeds cover it. And they saw it as being healthy straight away, and that the country around it they didn't see as healthy at all. So they knew intuitively what they were seeing. I believe in this really strongly. I believe in the power of good burning. I believe in good science associated with it. And I believe in what I was taught in the Territory and making it work in other places. I don't know how often fire works here, or what periods you need, what intensities. It's all learning for me. But I think it's worth a try. With nothing else seems to be working. We pour chemical on, we spray weeds, we've got pests everywhere. Look at what happens. So I think it's about time for a bit of a try. Look at it in a new way. It's certainly working out west for us. We've got lots of people looking at it. Michelle will tell you how hard it's been. It's not an easy try. A lot of people, not really in favour of the ideas, but enough people to get a swing towards letting us have a try.